Let's bring our speakers up. Mike, really on.
I probably
That was
would
affecting
need.
Corbin's page.
Oh, okay, I'll do that, otherwise you might get a double yell at.
All right.
Well,
How are you doing today?
I'm good, I guess I can go ahead and introduce myself, that might be the easiest thing. So, who am I? You heard that I'm a lawyer. I think a little bit about my background is probably relevant to what we're going to talk about tonight, which is negotiation. First, let me mention my partner, Charlie Heinzman, who's enormously experienced specifically with this type of distressed property negotiation as an agent himself and a broker or works with a I mean, he has the ground truth of how this stuff works. So you want to know Charlie and listen closely. What I'm going to talk a little bit is about some of the principles of negotiation, which you heard about. Why should you listen to me? Well, and this is the resume thing, so you can tell I'm enormously modest. But I worked at a couple of large law firms, working with 25 biggest companies in the world, doing big settlements, big litigation. I'm a litigator by trade, and things related to the World Trade Center, asbestos, very high-end, expensive negotiations. And I think Charlie's one of the best negotiators I've seen. But I probably learned as much from Charlie and also from having 4 children. Negotiation is negotiation. And you've heard a little bit of that tonight, and I think you want to think even more. I mean, these are all, there's nothing bad about anything there. Stole a few of my ideas, of course, because there's some, key things for what you're doing. But I think you want to think more broadly. Let me also mention, so I don't forget, we're also have been launching what we call Clear Sky Education. We're involved with the Clear Sky group of companies. We're partners in that project, the hard money, all the things that Charlie mentioned. So we're even more so trying to get out there. We have a book that's a bestseller on Amazon. We're going to be offering online courses that we've been shooting and some direct consulting or educational services that I think are going to be pretty exciting. So that's the bigger picture for us. So then I guess the question is, what do I want? And I already told you who I am, what do I want? Well, I'm not going to tell you what I would tell my psychiatrist. What I mean by what do I want is we're getting into the steps of the negotiation. And again, everything you heard is great. The number one problem is each and every one of you. You are the problem in a negotiation. The place you need to start is to understand yourself. So I said, what do I want? Well, I want money. Okay, that's sort of a simple answer, and at some levels it's true, but is that really your motivation? Is that, as you go through negotiation, is that what's going to matter? What do you want at the end of the day? Money is fine, but you look at people who incredibly successful people in business or politics. Mother Teresa needed money to do what she did, but that was not her motivator. For those of you, I guess it's an old reference now, but she was out there helping the poor, and that's what brought her joy, which was value more than you give her $1 million, she'd be glad because she could help the poor with that. Nelson Mandela freeing his country, he had that motivation, and then there's bad motivations. I don't know, Stalin, whoever you want to pick, where they want to aggrandize themselves. So hopefully your motivation will be a little bit more positive. At the end of the day, I'm a lineman, offensive lineman, and a litigator. So my starting point is I want to run people over. I want to flatten somebody on the football field. But that's there's not really a whole lot of negotiation there. There's some trickery involved in sports. And in litigation, the same thing. I was saying to one of my partners once years ago, are we really adverse to this particular party? Maybe we can, he said, well, Ed, let me put it this way. We want to take their heads off and mounted on a pipe outside of our office so nobody ever messes with this client again. Okay, that's a good point. That was our motivation in that. Now, fortunately, and why I like, and I've sort of pivoted to doing the real estate world and working with Charlie, is there's a lot happier results that you can get. And you heard the reference to win-win. But again, first, what is your win? You know, if you're here to, and I don't think you seem like nice people, if you're here to steal somebody's house or be unreasonable to them or get every last dollar out of them, this is not a good idea. And what I've seen from working with Charlie and our partner Sam, there's so much money and things that you quote unquote give up to make a good deal, to feel good about the result, to save yourself time. You know, a good fair deal is going to save you effort along the way. Now, why is understanding the motivation with each of your motivation with each deal very important? Because you have to decide, what am I going to push? What do I really care about? And you heard some of it here, which certainly covers most properties. You want these things quickly and easily. You don't want a lot of problems. You may want the tenant to leave. You may want the homeowner to stay because that's what they want. And there will be things that you can give up. And particularly depending on the person you're negotiating with, people, you know, you heard some of the needs. I have money needs. I have a foreclosure coming. But we're all human beings. They have similar motivation. You know, they don't want to feel, and hopefully at the end of the day they won't feel that you've taken advantage of, that they've gotten a fair resolution to their problem. So, when what you think they want and what you want, you may not really realize at first, and that's important to think about. The other thing about, again, knowing yourself, I really want to focus on is be honest. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with the person you're negotiating with. That doesn't mean you necessarily provide all of the information. Information is very valuable. But whatever you say and whatever you do, it better be honest. Now, we can look at this as a moral situation, but let's look about the reality of it is people are human lie detectors. Okay? If you may not even realize a little bit you're kind of tricking yourself, but the person you will talk to will know, particularly in person, which is why anytime you can be in person, it's going to be better. They're going to know if you're lying or if you're feeding them a lie because it's going to show. I mean, this is why we have a jury system. It's not perfect, but the jury sits there and looks at the witnesses to decide, do I believe this person? So much better than these lie detector tests don't work, obviously. People will know. So be honest with yourself so that you can be honest with the person that you're negotiating with. Okay, still haven't gotten to the person you're negotiating with. The other thing you need to know is, what does your team want? We talk a lot in our book and other places about having a team, and you may have certain goals, but your team may have other goals. I had a big case regarding the collapse of the World Trade Center, and I thought we shouldn't pay any. Well, we already paid $5 million. This policyholder wanted $100 million because they were trying to take advantage, frankly, of the situation. And we recommended the client basically, pay us a couple million in legal fees. We'll win ultimately, and we did. But at a certain point, the client came to me and said, "Do you think they would take $40 million to settle?" And I said, "I don't know. These people are pretty bad, but there's a chance of it. But why? Why would you possibly want to give them $40 million?" He said, "Because our company is looking to merge with another company, and we want these things off our books. They don't look good. 9/11's not good." And so what my team wanted, I'm an attorney representing in that case for the negotiation. I needed to know what they wanted. And ultimately, it was sort of fortunate that the other side didn't want to settle for anything reasonable. We kind of started with some early negotiation. They just wanted cash. They were very simplistic. It was a white glove law firm on the other side in New York, and they did not do a good job of representing their client, who later went to jail. But that's another story. The client, not the lawyer. So, all right, now we're on to what do they want on the other side.
Before we go ahead,
Yeah.
that was a lot of really good stuff. But like, do you guys have any questions about, just before he goes on, do you guys have any questions about that? Because you're going to have a hard time, what I heard, real quickly, you're going to have a hard time sitting in front of another human being trying to create a solution if you're not right on your side of the table and understanding who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, what are the values that you're bringing to the table, because that stuff just gets sniffed out real easy. It doesn't seem to kind of like line up. Any questions though? I thought it was amazing, and thank you. Any questions you guys might have about any of that? Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome after as well to come up and talk. But ultimately, you're all the problem, not me. So think about that. Talk to your counselor, your whatever the case may be. And great point, by the way, about talking slowly. I had my partners would always yell at me when I dealt with cases in the South, and we're in a very interesting place here because you get sort of the northerner transplants and you get the real long-time Southern people, and your approach is going to have to vary. You don't want to talk as fast as I am for this purpose. And so when you're getting now into talking to the other person, you heard a little bit about slow down. I would say even more directly, please, for the love of God, shut up. Okay, just listen. And one of the best things in depositions I learned as a young attorney is to shut up after you've asked a question and sit. Now, you can't be too aggressive here, but sit there. If you stare at somebody, and I don't recommend staring at this, but if you look at somebody and they've said something and you don't immediately say something else, they're going to keep talking. This is normal. We've all been at cocktail parties. We're here, we mingle or whatever, and you say something, yeah, I love you, blah, and they kind of look at you. You feel like you need to fill that conversation, okay? So, I've read transcripts of attorneys. They'll say, so Mr. So-and-so, when did you meet your wife originally? Well, I met her in December of 1982, and yeah, 20 years later, I murdered her. And then the attorney's like, okay, so when you first met her, where did you go on your first date? Like, it's almost that bad. I'm obviously exaggerating, thank goodness, but and it's hard because when you're in a conversation, you have certain things that you want to accomplish. That's why you need to know your numbers. A guy like Charlie, he doesn't have to look on the MLS. He knows all of these areas. He can pretty much come up with a number pretty easily just by ear, by listening to it. You're not going to be right there initially, that's fine, but do your homework, pay attention to the marketplace, and particularly as we talk about in some other contexts, when you're doing driving for dollars, you know your neighborhood, that's the greatest place to go, is to be knocking on doors in areas that you know, because you're going to know a lot of those things off the top of your head. So, and along the lines of listening, do not assume that this person has the motivation you think they should have, or that you would have in the circumstance. Okay, it's a pre-foreclosure, they're going to be foreclosed on in a week. I could just assume they want to stop that foreclosure and get the hell out of there. Maybe, but they may have other underlying problems. They have personal emotional issues. They have other stresses in their life. So a little bit you have to play, junior psychiatrist to at least listen and hopefully be empathetic and try to understand what the real motivation is. And I think somebody in that situation, as best I've seen it, is, most people out there are good people. Somebody maybe had a drug problem, gambling problem, a lot more likely lost a job, had a medical problem. That never happens. So there's all sorts of reasons that people are in a distress situation, whether it's a foreclosure or they need to leave their house or they got to get to take care of their kid in another state who's got injured or just had a grandchild. Whatever it is, there's a lot of reasons for it. And I think as human beings, we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to feel bad that we're in a distress situation. I think you see these people pummeled with all the lawyer letters and notices and buy your house, and I think people retreat into their shell. So to the extent you can hear their story, and you're going to help them even on that level, that you're hopefully a caring ear. Maybe you refer them to somebody else, as you heard, maybe you can help them, but more likely than not, you're going to hear what the real problem is. Maybe money, but usually it's going to be something on top of that. And certainly nobody wants to feel like they've been taken advantage of. And so if you are going to get a house at a low price, you need to be delivering something. That speed of the transaction, the lease back or free lease back. Somebody just might need 6 months to go. What the amazing thing I saw one time, I think the biggest problem the person had is they had been in a house growing up, and then I think they may have inherited the house, and then they had financial problems. Their biggest issue was they had no idea how to get an apartment. So they had no idea, well, when am I going to get the money? But how do I do this? How do I go to an apartment? How do I go, maybe, I want to go to a senior living center or to a group, whatever it is, but how do I do that? And having to help my parents deal with that sort of stuff, it is really complicated. And, so you may not know that, but you may be able to partner with others who do. Okay, so what's the goal here? If it's a zero-sum game to a lot of people, I get more money, they get less more money, not good. Especially, again, there's other terms besides money, and there's even some people that they view it as negative sum. The guy's on trial in New York right now, who some people famously say, if you get $1, that means I get $1 less. If I get $1 more, you get $1 less. Well, real contracts, this is a litigator now talking about this, real agreements, it really is a win-win, where money changes hands, where help changes hands, where maybe one person wants money more than the other person does. There's time, there's feelings of success, and so everybody can go away winning. It doesn't have to be something that you lose. That said, the person on the other side may feel that way. They want to feel like they've won something. So again, that's why you should have things that you can give up. I've driven Sam and Charlie crazy doing some cases. Lawyers love to negotiate with the split the difference thing. So they'll say, the opening demand is $50 million. And so I usually was a defense attorney, so I'll say $10,000. And then they'll say, $49,500,000. And then I'll say $300,000. And this goes on and on and on. And everybody knows those numbers are not right. Some people like to negotiate that way. It's a horrendous waste of time. Get closer to your number, and again, depending on the situation. But somebody may feel like, on the other side, that they need your number to go up. They need to feel like they didn't just get the beginning number. It really depends, and I think Charlie can talk. I don't think that happens a whole lot, honestly. But there could be some negotiation with that. Okay, the negotiation process. And this is really hard for me. It's not hard for Charlie. Avoid formality. We're social animals. Relate to the person on a social, personal level, not a fake way. But again, if you listen and the old tactic of talking to the person should be hopefully legitimate. They say, this is what's happening, and this is what happened. I'm sorry to hear that. How is there a way you can think of I can help you, or let me think of a way I can help you? But tell me more about it so I can understand the problem and listen to what they've gone through. I had a case that I was handling for Charlie and Sam. Bought a house that a person we knew who don't know anymore told us was vacant. In DC, that's a big deal, as many of you may know. The house was not vacant, and the people made up a fake lease, which is a big thing in DC. Was able to show that the lease had been faked by subpoenaing an internet company in Canada. I mean, it's a big deal to get somebody out. But there was a guy who had lived in the house since the 70s, who was a Vietnam vet, who had a heroin problem, but had kicked all that. It was very nice. He probably had a little bit of a claim to stay there. But at the end of the day, he wasn't so much interested in money as he wanted to be able to tell his story about, not about the Vietnam, but about his living in this house and his family and what they had experienced. And, at the end of the day, we really could have got away with paying him very little. We paid him 2 or 3 times what we had to, which was not by me. $10,000, maybe $15,000 was inconsequential to the size of the deal. But the biggest thing that he really wanted was to be heard about what he had gone he felt, and he had to the situation that these fake tenants had really kind of hosed the guy. So that's what he wanted to talk about. Okay, believe it or not, and we're moving along pretty quickly. The start of the negotiation. There's all that stuff so far, right? Again, hopefully they won't and you won't notice it. But the start of the negotiation is everything I just said, which is understanding and listening. Again, learning, and then providing information. You may provide information to get information. You may need to expose yourself or empathize with a problem that you've had in order to make that connection. All right, now as we're moving forward, hopefully getting to a real deal, you want to describe and define the problems. We're getting a little bit more concrete, like the bunny example or whatever it is. Oh, that's a problem. I'm going to focus on that first. This is a problem. We're going to fix this, and we can do it. I know I've done a lot of deals. I'm creative. We're going to get this done. So let's take that. Let's get that off the table, and now let's figure out the other stuff. Whatever it is, where you lump it together, it really depends. Again, do you need to stroke the ego of somebody on the other side? Oh, and I meant to mention, for the love of God, please take your ego and remove it from the situation. This is not about, my only ego at this point is, I like to teach people and do things. My ego is winning and closing the deal or whatever it is. My ego is not beating the other side down or whatever it is. Put your ego to the side. You do have to have the ego of being confident, like you heard, but not in a smart way. You need to have legitimate confidence. Closing, you heard a lot about. I think you should be able to orally summarize what the key terms are. Money, you can live this amount of time. Does that sound good to you? Is there anything else you need? What else can I do? Okay, well, so here's the 5 things I think we came up with. Now to go forward, so I can do those things for you, I've got a 1-page agreement that you have to sign. And these guys, Sam and Charlie, I've written hundreds of pages of contracts and details, so usually it's a waste of time. Because generally, if you want to have a fight, people are going to have a fight about a contract. But a nice, simple 1-page that has some bullet points. The reason being to set expectations. That's the best thing about a contract, is if it sets expectations of what you're going to do and what they're going to do. And then post-negotiation, conclusion, you've signed this agreement. Hopefully you've set it up in such a way that the incentives remain in place. We've been talking a lot, and I love to use the word incentive and motivation. The incentives have to remain aligned. You want this deal to actually close without fighting or litigation, God forbid, or problems. So the deal should be structured in such a way that happy events keep happening towards the closing. Money may change hands a certain amount, but maybe there's a certain amount, and most of you probably know this, that you're going to reserve for when they actually leave. But within that whole structure, it's not just money. What is the happy event? And the happy event may be reducing their pain, stopping the foreclosure, whatever it is. So along the ways, please keep doing that. And then finally, I'll say before handing it off to Charlie is rinse and repeat. One of the reasons to think through your motivation to be a good person on this is hopefully this is not one deal. You come in and you hose somebody, you get every last dollar. Eventually that gets around. First of all, it's corrosive to yourself, but conversely, if you do a good deal, people oftentimes know other people and say, hey, Charlie took good care of me. He did what he said he was going to do, and that's the guy you should talk to. He'll fix your problem. So don't forget, this should hopefully be a long-term relationship. So I want to turn it over to Charlie to talk about what really matters is the real world. And we have a very recent deal that Charlie put up. I'd love you to come up and start talking about, and then I can yell at you or heckle you as you go along.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ed. Good evening. Who now wants to learn about distressed assets? And who wants to learn about deal making within distressed assets? We all do. But I can't begin until I kind of clarify some things about it. The one thing that Ed did not tell you about negotiation is that not only does Ed study religiously, but anytime he goes against the other side, he knows more than they know. The preparation is unbelievable. Knowing the person on the other side of the table is important. Knowing who the judges were in particular cases is very important. So one of the things that he left out was that he is very detail-oriented and he has the information that he knows in the back of his head when he enters into that negotiation. He knows who your wife is. He knows who your kids are. He knows the judge. He knows the political affiliation of the judge. Okay? Now, the same thing goes with negotiating distressed assets and distressed properties. The same exact thing goes, and that's the way we approach it. So in the last 3 weeks, and I'm not talking from a hard money lending standpoint, I am talking about acquiring and buying distressed assets. We have bought 4 houses in the last 3 weeks. 2 of them were with a student. The other 2, I'm going to tell them a secret. One of them was a tax lien certificate in Washington, D.C. that we got quiet title on at a very good price. The second one was from a wholesaler that found us because we buy houses all cash on Craigslist, and every hour my assistant takes down the ad, puts up the same ad over and over 8 or 9 times. Wholesaler reached out to us and we got it. The third way that we got it was through one of my students. He got it on auction.com. And the fourth way, what I'm going to talk about, is how one of my students got the house, was from a Driving for Dollars property. 3810 Dominion. And I'm going to tell you the address because anytime any of you guys have ever heard me speak, I give you guys the assets so you can go ahead and skip trace it once it gets on the MLS and once it gets done. And so what happened is my student's wife was driving for dollars, found 2 vacant properties, one of them on Dominion Drive, Prince William Estates in Dumfries, if you guys don't know. It's an older single-family development. And he goes to me, I found these 2 houses, and they were vacant. I don't know what to do. I said, okay, give me the address, and I'll go ahead and skip trace. The house was vacant. It was a hoarder house. It was loaded from floor to ceiling with stuff, right? He wanted to know why it was vacant. And so I skip traced it. I found out that it was owned by 2 people. Right? The first thing I do is I go to the tax record. It was owned by 2 people. Well, I did a little skip trace on it. The wife had died, right? And this is really important that you guys have to know in a second. I'll explain it. The wife had died. Then I went and looked at the other owner's name. He had died. Okay, so then I'm like, okay, well, did he die with a will or without a will? Very important, testate and testate. Well, he died without a will and testate. So then what happened is I went ahead and skip traced the guy that died, and luckily he had a very uncommon name. So it was very simple for me to do it. Skip traced him, found out that he of course died. But then, when you, Miss Laura back here, you'll know, when you die intestate, the way it works is up, down, out. Up means parents, down means kids, out means brother, sister first, right? And then cousins and aunts and uncles. Well, in this case, he died, he was 8 years old. He didn't have anybody up, right? Parents had died. If you go down, he had no kids. However, the wife that died before him had 3 kids. But because she died, the property was owned joint tenants with right of survivorship. So when she died, he automatically owned the house. Okay. Well, he died. So then I had to skip trace him. I found out that he had a sister in Alexandria on Claremont Drive, in Alexandria. And so I knew that she was the only heir of this property. And the story gets a little bit better, and I'll try and quickly do it because I have to explain some of the negotiating tactics that we use. So I figured out that the sister who was living was the only heir to this house. And this is where it gets really, really important. So then I sent my student all this information. I sent him skip trace from IDI Core. I sent him skip trace from thatstem.com. I sent it to him email. I said, hey, Keith was supposed to come tonight, but I don't see him. I said, hey, Keith, you're going to call this lady, right? She had a couple phone numbers. I had an email address. I had everything for him. And I just laid it out. He calls her up that night. It was about 8 o'clock at night. He calls her up. That conversation lasted 5 minutes. She said, get the hell off my phone. Do never call me again. I don't ever want to hear from you again. He calls me up and he says, yeah, I called her up. And she was rude to me. And she said, never call her again. Take her off the list. So what did I do? Call
Rolled out.
rolled out. So I said, Keith, I hit the nail on the head. This is the only living heir. We're gonna go pay her a visit the next day at 1 o'clock. We're gonna roll up on her house, because she lived in Alexandria, she was local. And so, what did I do next? I did the ARV of the house, he gave me the address. Mind you, I've never seen the house. I had just seen pictures of the house. I don't care. I see that this house is boarded up. It's boarded up around the house, windows, up top it's boarded up. It's a boarder house, it's vacant, I don't care, right? I know the dimensions of the house. So what I do, pull the tax record, I got the ARV, right? Computed the ARV on the MLS, like we do. The next thing I did though, and the most important thing that I did, is I pulled title. It was an uncommon name, I went and got title. So I knew exactly what the title looked like. And guys, what you gotta understand about distress, there's 3 types of distress on these assets. Number 1, there's financial distress, which is what we all think about pre-foreclosures, tax certificates, all that. There is conditional distress, vacants, blights, and all those kind of things. You guys here driving for dollars. And number 3, there is emotional distress. So there's 3 layers of distress that you've got to understand moving in. Okay. So then what happened was, I had the ARV figured out, I know what that was. I had the title figured out. Oh, by the way, you know what was on the title? Nothing, the house was paid off. He had a UCC lien by somebody who put a UCC lien on the house roof. The house was basically owned outright. I knew that going in, okay? I knew all about his sister going in. I knew the title, I knew the ARV, I knew the sister. I'm prepared, I'm ready.
And let me interrupt there. I mean, this is a perfect example. Look how much work, there's not a single bit of negotiation yet
Not yet.
that's gone on with all of that stuff. And all of that gets flushed down the toilet if it doesn't work. So this, you know, takes a lot of work in this field. How long do you think, I mean, your experience, how long do you think it took you to get that package together before you knocked on the door?
3.5, 4 hours.
Yeah.
4 hours. Because the research of not only the guy that died took a really long time, figuring out who the sister was. The research on the sister took a long time. She didn't want to be found. And then, of course, the title search. Luckily for me, though, he had a very uncommon name. I could do the title myself. I didn't have to go to a title attorney. That would have taken me another day. It would have put us back. So I said, okay, Keith, we're going to roll out. Okay. It's raining that day. And it's very important that you understand it's raining. The day that we shoot. She luckily had a covered, luckily for me, she had a covered porch. I knock on the door. And one of the things that you got to understand, guys, is when you knock on people's doors, you got to understand your posture is very, very important. You can't knock on somebody's door. Let's say he's the door. You can't knock on the door and stand in the door, look through the door, look through the windows. You cannot do that. So when I knock on the door, my posture is 45-degree angle. I'm looking away. I'm looking around. I'm looking at anything other than the person in the door. I'm not even looking in the house. So it's very important that you guys understand the posture. Okay, that's very important. When it was raining that day, she had a covered porch. She answers the door.
This is a silly question, real quick, Charlie, because I've done thousands of door knocks, mostly in residence. Do you have a door knock that you actually use? I mean, like.
I would love that, but I don't.
No? So just from doing, just one little thing, just from doing it, because 100% standing back, kind of looking over your shoulder, like non-threatening, the door knock that I've worked on that actually works the best, from my experience, is
Yes.
3,
Yes,
stop,
yes.
3. It
Yes,
sounds
do
crazy,
that.
but it's
Yes.
it's not, you know, it's not, you know, that kind of crap or whatever. It's not super familiar. It's not super strange. It's not a cop. It's just kind of like,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
assuming.
yes, I do have a door knock.
Okay.
But more, just as importantly though, the door knock isn't obnoxious, it's very soft.
Yeah.
Very soft. Okay, so then what happens is, she answers the door. She berated me for 30 minutes.
30 minutes, Charlie.
She dropped the F-bomb 20 times, and this is where the negotiation gets in. She threatened to pull a gun on me twice. I've had a gun pulled on me before, and it's not fun. And so I knew her name, I knew everything about her. She wanted to know one thing. How did you find me? How did you get my name? In between all the FUs. She would not let me get in a word edgewise because she wanted control. She was actually had an emotional distress, which I found out later. Okay. Well, one of the things about negotiation is, what do you do, in especially confrontational situations, is, what do? You allow the person to talk. You allow them to talk themselves out of it. And I said to her, I said, Miss Rose, I'll give you your name, I probably should have done that, but I won't give you your last name. I said, Miss Rose, I said, we come in peace. We're not confrontational. I'm not trying to do anything over and over again. How did you get my name? How did you get my name? F you, get the F off my property. Okay, man, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave if you need me to leave. But she wouldn't stop talking. So then I was like, okay. She still wanted to know how I found her name. She wouldn't stop talking. All of a sudden, she flipped the switch. The switch went off. The confrontational switch went off. She became sort of a friend. She then goes to me, she goes, hey, Charlie, let me go get something. I need to show you something. I'm scared as hell. So I said to her, I said, Rose, I said, are you going to get a gun? She said, no, I need to get you something. I need to show you something. So then she comes back, and I said, now it's been about 30 minutes. I said, Rose, I said, my friend Keith here, he's been standing in the rain for 30 minutes. Do you mind if he steps up on the porch? So now we're getting a good rapport, right? Now we're getting somewhere. She still wants to know how I found her, right? So then she invites me in, she invites us in. We sit at the kitchen table because when you're negotiating distressed asset, guys, I don't care what anybody says, you can agree. There's only one place to do it. It's in the living room. So you've got to have that understanding. The next understanding that you also have to have is you have to have, there's a reason, the house isn't the only reason. It's not the only problem they have. They have a myriad of other problems which got them into this case, right? So in this case, it wasn't a financial distress. Well, at the time, it wasn't emotional distress, but obviously it was, because who does this to somebody? But keep talking, right? But thirdly, though, it was a conditional distress, and that's how we got the house. Because the house didn't have a financial distress, it was paid off. And so we got into her kitchen. She laid it all out on the table. Why? She didn't want to be involved with the house. Do you know why she didn't want to be involved in the house? And the reason is because she didn't want her name associated with the house, because her brother that died with a ton of medical bills. And she did not want her name associated because she didn't want to inherit those medical bills. She honestly didn't know about it. So I said to her, I said, look, all we're trying to do is we just want to buy the house. We know you're the only living heir. And I explained to her exactly the process that I went through to find. Now, this lady has MS. She's got health issues. She doesn't know how long she's going to live. And she did everything for her dying brother to the day he died. And he lived in a border home, and that house was littered with guns. He wasn't a very nice guy. He was making bullets. And so she was very emotionally distraught about his life and about her role in helping him, right? So then she goes to us, and you're not going to believe this. She goes, okay, I will sell you the house, but have you seen the house? Of course I haven't seen the house. I just see pictures from the outside. She goes, that house is a teardown. And so remember, one of the things that I'm talking about, now we're negotiating. The only difference is she doesn't realize we're negotiating because she's doing all the talking. At this point in time, I haven't really said much, and she's not letting me get in anything work-wise. And the most important thing that she wanted with this transaction, she wanted control. She wanted control over the transaction. So then I'm like, okay. So now, mind you, I'm getting all this information from her. I'm not saying a word. He's sitting there. This is the first time he's ever shown up to a distressed seller. He thinks this always happens.
Keith, you talking about?
Keith Honore, yeah. I'll tell you about Keith Honore. You go with him. And Keith had never seen it, so he's not saying a word. And so
He's just sitting there.
Thank God I have Charlie.
No idea
Thank God
what's going on.
Thank God she hasn't shown a gun.
Yeah.
So then I let her talk the entire time. And then what I did is what I always do in all kinds of negotiations. Remember though, I have all the information. I know everything about the house. So then what I always do, and this is very, very important too, is that I always try to get some commonality between me and who I'm talking to. I have to get commonality, whether it's a sports commonality, whether it's a business commonality, whether it's a charitable commonality, whether it's a personal commonality, whether it's kids, something. I have to get commonality because the other thing that we're doing is we got to get trust. I need her to trust me, right? That's the most important thing, because in any kind of negotiation, what he didn't say is that he has to get the trust too. And we have to make a win-win deal here. We have to get trust. So then she was like, okay, you know about the house, right? I didn't really know anything about the interior of the house. I knew it was vacant. I knew it was a hoarder home. I knew the dimensions of the house. I knew it was going to cost full gut renovation $200,000. I knew the numbers. That's what I knew. But I didn't know anything about the house. So then she goes, well, that house is a tear down. You know it's a tear down, right? Well, I said, yeah, I guess it's a tear down. She goes, it's only worth the land that it sits on. That's all it's worth. I said, okay. It's okay. The house is worth $6.25. Okay, so. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not ready to look at Keith, but I can't look at Keith because I'm like, Keith, the house is still standing, right? Because I don't want her to know that I ain't seen the house. I just saw pictures of the house. Right? And so I was like, yeah, you're right. You know, it's got black mold in it. She told us all the stories about the house, how the toilet had been running for 2 years, and it had black mold all over the house. And she talks. I said, okay, all right. I just got to strip the house down to the studs, do a new floor plan, get rid of the black mold with a chemical, $200,000. So I know what the renovation is, no problem. So then I said to her, okay, Miss Rose. And every time I talk to somebody, though, it's always a miss or misses. You always got to be very polite and respectful, because, like I said, there's more problems in the house. I said, okay, Miss Rose, I agree with you. Everything she says, I am agreeing. I am not trying to make it any more confrontational than it has to be, because I have already been berated for 30 minutes with all the F-bombs, and I've never been, excuse me, French, bitched out like this, ever. 450 houses we flipped, never like this. So then I was like, okay, what do you want to do with the money? Because at this point in time, she's anxious. I know her background. She's an anxious person. She has anxiety. She wants nothing to do with the money. She just wants it to be over. That's it. She wants it to be over. This is her nightmare she's living. I uncovered her nightmare. And that's why she was so mean to us. She had so much anxiety about her brother. I brought back so many memories, bad memories. So now we have emotional anxiety that I now have to be a psychologist, a psychiatrist at the same time. Brought her off the ledge. She did jump off the building, got her calmed down, and she's still spewing out information. So this appointment, which should have been maybe 30 minutes, ended up taking 3 hours because I had to hear all the stories. But then, again, that's part of the negotiation. That's part of the house. That's part of building the trust, right? So then she goes, I don't want to have anything to do with the money. I want to donate it. Because one of the cards that I used is a guy that I brought, son got killed as a suicide, and he's starting a scholarship fund in the name of his son. And plus, I run a couple of charities, Catholics for Housing, which is a low-income housing charity, Clear Sky Sports Angels, which we give money to unprivileged youth to play sports. So I hit her at the charity end, because she didn't want to have anything to do with the money. She said, that's a great idea. I'm going to donate whatever money you pay for this house to whatever charity is of your choosing. Right? And I said to her, I said, Miss Rose, I said, that's not what we're going to do. I said, because I just met you. I said, I can't leave here with buying this house, which you think is a piece of land, and I cannot leave here with that money going to charity. So basically what we did is we agreed on the price, which is the price of the land, which is the teardown. She told me the price. I agreed. But I also, mind you, I have a contract in the car. I have all kinds of information in the car, but there was no way in heck that I'm going to bring it with me because I didn't want her to really further think that we were being more and more predatory. So then what I said, Rose, we finally got to an agreement, and we finally got to the problems of the house and her problems, and we could solve some of her problems externally. And so then we started talking about contractors that she used for her house. Her house was immaculate. It's beautiful. He had a back injury. He can't help her anymore. My contractor, Mauricio, literally lived around the streets. I said, okay. I said, Rose, no problem. You're solved for life. Whatever you need, my contractor's right around the street. Call him up. So now we're solving some of Rose's problems too. Okay. So then what I said to her, I said, look, tomorrow I will email you the contract, and I want you to show the contract to your lawyer so they can look it over. Like Ed was saying, 2 or 3 page contracts, 3-page contract. We're very simple. Even though I'm a realtor too, we have these crazy stupid contracts. I don't know if they're stupid or not, but we have these long-winded contracts that, like Ed said, even if you fill out a long contract, it's still going to be litigated. Whether it's 3 pages, 2 pages, 20 pages, it doesn't matter. Okay. So when I did, I sent her the contract, and I wanted her to still have control over this transaction because she needed that. She needed control. And so I had to be very, very subservient. But that was just part of this particular negotiation process. And so we brought this down. And so why I want to tell you this is because I used every single negotiating technique that I have ever learned in this one transaction. And oh, by the way, the numbers look like this. A $125 purchase, a $200,000 renovation, a $50,000 finance holding kind of fee 6 months in advance that we provided the entire nut for, $375. So basically, Keith's getting a house for $625, $375, all in paid off. One of my students. And so that's how the numbers are going to look. But if it wasn't for the skip trace, if it wasn't for the emotional distress, if it wasn't for the physical distress of the house, it wasn't for all these kinds of things, getting a trust, right? Getting trusted, having more information than that she really knew. Oh, and one of the common things that we did, the last thing I'll talk about, one of the bridges of commonality that we did is she worked for a guy by the name of Peter Rosenkrantz. He was an investor himself. He was a distressed, he would put second trust on properties, he would buy credit card debt, he would buy medical debt. She worked for him for 30 years. She knew a lot more than I let on, but that was our commonality. We bridged the gap, and that's how we got to a nice trusted source. And let me tell you guys, not only did we buy the house, she's now my best friend. She calls me all the time. But that's how it is, right? Even though to you guys, the $125 that we paid for the house, yeah, it was a good deal for us, don't get me wrong. It was also a win-win for her. And oh, by the way, the charity that she gave the money to was a rescue charity on Eisenhower Boulevard in Alexandria. And she was so excited that I was on vacation last week. She called me up and she said, it was $125, but I think she got it around $120,000. She goes, I dropped off this $120,000 check to this rescue. All three of us started crying. I didn't cry, but the people that she gave the check to started crying. And so she is so relieved because we solved her emotional distress. The house was secondary to the negotiation, but we had to get there. And so, but this happens to us all the time. She'll tell you, I carted her around so many houses, meeting people, getting doors slammed in our faces, but it took a couple times for us to get to that living room to finally get our first review. But that's how it works. Guys, that's it, man. It's got to be win-win. That's it. I'm good. That's it.
Is your mic working, or did you just switch mics?
Just real simple math, right? So we were there for 3 hours, and the equity was like over $300,000. So you got like paid $100,000 per hour. That's a hell of a skill.
It's not bad. That was one of our. I mean, that's one of our very. And so the address, guys, you can write it down. It's 3810 Dominion Court, Prince William States. You might see the ownership. It's 1111 Services. My friend Keith Henry's son got hit by a train at Wingate University his third day of school. He was supposed to play basketball on a scholarship. And one of the things that we're going to do with the proceeds of the house is we're going to help him fund his scholarship fund. And that's what we're going to do. And he's one of my students. You know, I coach him. And I help him with with his deals. And, you know, I couldn't be more proud of him. But that was one of the things, though, that actually commonality set us up with Rose. And she was touched by the story that he told about the son and about this. And Rose has a lot of distrust in her life. So that was the common thing that we used. We certainly didn't use it for our gain, even though we did get some gain. But that was very critical to our negotiation, was getting that commonality situated, getting her to come off the fence, understanding why she was so mad at us to begin with, and just talking like normal humans. And then once she was talking like a normal human, we were always talking like normal humans. We were always respectful. She then apologized. But if you guys don't understand confrontation, and especially Ed, he'll tell you this, when you're in a very heated confrontation with somebody, and you come out on the other side, you probably know this too, when you come out of it on the other side, what happens? They become your best friends. Because you guys have fought and fought and fought against each other, but you came out for the common good. They're your best friends, and they're friends for life. But that's what it's all about, because at the end of the day, we can make money, but at the end of the day, it's all about the relationships. So just like this lady Rose, who now is, she's not my best friend, but I'm her best friend. We're going to help her through her last however many years she has left, and I'm certainly sending my contractor over to her house. She's got an immaculate house. And whatever work that she needs, my contractor is going to serve her needs for however long, because we now have a relationship. I don't have anything else to gain from Rose. I don't care. It's about Rose as a human. And so once we got down to the humanality of it, and we got down to the problems, everything's good. And so that's it. But you guys got to go win-win.
Questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Real quick on the mics. Is this the only working mic that we have?
Well, I can talk without a mic.
Yes?
Yeah,
It's just
I
for the-
don't need mics.
It's more so for the internet
Oh,
to pick
I-
up what
okay.
people are saying.
Hello, Facebook. by the way.
Hello. Is this working?
Yeah, it's only for the internet. So yes, it is. You go right ahead.
So when you sent her the contract via email, how long did it take her to respond to you, or did you follow up? You know, were you?
No, you know better than that. That's a great question. I'll explain that to you in a second. That's a great question. Are you guys familiar? Have you guys seen the movie Hitch?
Yeah.
You seen the movie Hitch? Who has seen it? Well, there's a great scene in Hitch. The movie was basically about Will Smith, how he was trying to hook up Albert Brenneman, get him a girlfriend. So his whole job was to hook people up, hitch them up, right? And so one of the famous scenes in that movie was when Albert was going to kiss, I forgot her name, he was going to kiss her the first time. And Will Smith would always say, go 90% into the kiss and make her do that last 10%. Kiss back, so that you know. It's the same thing with real estate, and it's the same thing with contracts, and it's the same thing with dealing with distressed owners. You have to go meet them and greet them, talk to them, work it out, but at the end of the day, they have to come back to you and make the action. You have already done the first action. You've got to get them to act back. If they don't act back, and if you keep pressuring them, odds are they're not going to act back. You have to give them a period of time for them to act back. Now, in this case, the period of time could have been a day, it could have been a week, it could have been a year. You can't worry about that. You have to let them act back so that you know that you have a deal. And you cannot be too pushy because you're going to scare them away. Good? Answer, Jan?
Yeah.
I want to say something. Today I went to the courthouse and I looked at the probate records and I got that property on the list, but you already beat me to it, man.
I didn't tell you the whole story. I didn't tell you the whole story. You want more of the story? Okay. You can grab time? All right, so what I did, and you pros, let me tell you a real pro move. I'm going to give you a pro move. Remember, she was very high anxiety. She was high stress. I had to make this whole transaction white glove for her. I wasn't going to make her leave her house. Once we had the report, I did everything white glove. And the one thing that I didn't do, I did the affidavit of heirs. Because what you have to do, guys, when you're in a probate situation like that, if there's no will, there's something called an affidavit of heirs. We were already under contract to buy the house because I knew she was the only heir. The rest of the world didn't know. So 2 days before we actually close, I show up with my notary, who, by the way, works for me, and I get an affidavit of heirs that I prepared, right? And I have her notarize it. I drove my little butt up to the courthouse with the original death certificate that she had already given me, and the list of heirs, already notarized, paid my $44, got that thing on record, we closed the next day. Did you see my deed? When you did your list of heirs search, so you just did a list of heirs search, so you wouldn't have seen my deed a day later, 2 days later. Because one of the things you have to realize, remember her biggest problem that she had? The biggest problem that she had, she did not want her name associated with that house. So I had to explain to her, you being the only heir for a brief second in time, and the only thing that's going to appear In that court records is two things. Your list of heirs filing the affidavit of heirs, your name's gonna pop there, your address, and your signature on the deed of that house is gonna appear. That's it. None of the debts that he owns is gonna attach because it wasn't in the title. So even if there might have been judgments out there, there wasn't even any judgments. There were no medical judgments out there. There was nothing to attach to the house. That's what we did. It's prohibited.
Let me just comment about the comment about the hourly, and what Charlie was kind to compliment me about this, and Charlie's even more so, is the preparation that went into it. But don't forget all the preparation that went into all of these that went just away. And I learned early on as an attorney, if you can't deal with quote unquote wasting your time, forget it. Now, lawyers was good. I got paid hourly, so I wanted to win a case. Oh, it's settled the day before trial. All that stuff went away. So what? And so, you know, Charlie probably can't count the number of times he's done that for himself, for me, for Sam, for other people, and all of those hours go into that profit, and that's some reason why you need a significant profit in terms of just making enough money to get by. But you know, you can't think like I need to put in as little work as possible. I need to put in as much work as possible because Charlie was able to give her what she needed because he already kind of knew a little bit of it. And also remember with the negotiation, Charlie started off by giving her what she needed, which was yelling at him for 3 hours. That was one of the main things she needed.
Oh, she certainly needed that. I mean, like I said, it really went on for 30 minutes, and that's exactly what she needed. I didn't realize it at the time that we were going to make a deal on the house. I literally thought she was going to turn her back to me and go get a gun and pointed at me.
So
But that's my fault.
let's give both of our speakers a big hand. I would encourage all of you, if you don't already have his contact information, to make sure you